everybody. Just a minor correction. I am in no way an expert in urban infrastructure. I think I'm like all of us, and very interested and concerned citizen. And I just thought that Sucheta has given us an opportunity to get together and discuss this issue. There are some things which, being a structural engineer, we are a little bit privy to some of the information, and I think that I would like to share some of that information in the hope that that will help us to come up with solutions. And I would not like to do that, but I think very likely I'm going to raise more questions than come up with solutions, but I think jointly we can try and do something. Basically, I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 different points. Let's just have cool heads, kind of prevail, and let's talk about, what are the bridge failures in India, and are we, in a situation where we have to press the panic button, as we seem to be doing in the city of Mumbai. Let's also talk about the larger issue of the state of bridges in India, and also maybe talk about some other parts of the world. And then let's look at what should be the system for auditing bridges. How do you select consultants to audit the bridges, and what is the quality of reports that we should get, and really what we are getting? And then, of course, as Sucheta said, let's look at what is the present state of road movement in Mumbai, and then maybe just a couple of low-hanging fruit that I think could perhaps help us to alleviate the challenges. I'm sorry. So I think what you're looking over here is, it's by no means comprehensive, but it more or less encaptures some of the bridge failures we've had in the past 20 years. And I think what is important in this is the ones which have marked as red are the bridges which have collapsed under construction. So when I've written UC, it is under construction. So I think what we need to worry about more is, not only do we not know how to maintain bridges, we don't know how to design and build bridges, right? Because I think out of 16 or so, 7 of them are bridges which have collapsed and failed during construction. That's something we should be worried about. The other thing we should be worried about is that a lot of these bridges which have collapsed during construction have been designed or were being supervised by some of our star consultants. So the problem, therefore, seems to me it's about oversight. It's about having very rigorous processes. It's about having more of supervision, this is an issue that we need to look at. I'm just going to, the background is of the Vivekanand Bridge in Kolkata, which collapsed. But I'm going to draw your attention to one bridge, which is the one which collapsed on 25th May 2012. I think that possibly was not imprinted in the minds of Mumbaikars because it happened somewhere out there. The reason I'm going to point out to you is I'm also trying to bring the larger issue that today what we are seeing as panic is not, and demolition decrees being given for bridges is not really purely in the technical domain. We've been talking about socio-technical issues or techno-economic issues. What we have not been talking about is the psycho-technical issue. And I think that's something which we need to talk about. We should talk about sentiment of people, because finally, these are all people with flesh and blood and fear. Okay, so the reason I'm pointing out this thing of 25th May 2012 is a bridge which was designed by IIT Roorkee. And perhaps none of you may be knowing that this bridge collapsed, and during the findings it was found that there was a design deficiency, and usually we do not expect our academic institutions to take up design of bridges. But for some strange reason, IIT had taken this up. Okay, the IIT had taken this up, and they had, this has nothing to do with gender, but there was a lady inspector or lady superintendent of police over there. She gave a warrant to IIT Roorkee. IIT Roorkee thought, we are academics, we don't need to go to court. They were pulled up, and they were actually in judicial custody, not for 1 day, 2 days, but for a long period. It is. That can shake anybody. And that can, especially if you're an IIT professor, you are never going to expect that. The reason I'm saying this is that, again, as I'm saying, it's this psychotechnical issue, and all of this, I think, is in our minds. So when the IIT director of Roorkee, when this happened, is also one of the people who's auditing 457 bridges here, right? So, what I'm trying to say is that all of us are actually a result of the experiences we've had, and so that makes us more, inclined to work with more caution. And I think that we must accept the human factor in all of us. So let us just go to this one issue, that if we're looking at bridges, let's try and understand who's in charge, who's taking ownership of all of this. We have in India about 5.9 million kilometers of road and bridge network. And if you're talking about the highways, that there are different players who actually are managing it. You have the Union Roads Ministry, which more or less kind of manages most of the national highways. Then a part of it, which they are not handling, is being handled by the NHAI. And of course, whatever highways and bridges come within the state are being handled by the state PWDs. And then some in the border states is being handled by the PRO. How much are we spending on bridge maintenance? I think that's something which we really need to look at. Between 2008 and 12, about 890 crores was allocated for maintaining 93,000 bridges, which really comes to a paltry 19,000 rupees per bridge. Yeah, so we can just kind of think what a mockery it is. In the budget of 18-19, the ministry had allocated about 3,000 crores towards the maintenance of the roads and highways. And we're talking about the national highways is about 1.15 lakh kilometers, okay? And interestingly, this was 1% less than what they had allocated the previous year. So, I'm not quite sure, what drives the decisions. But if you're looking at what percentage of the budget is allocated to maintenance, it's 4%. If you compare that to what is the allocation in the United States, that's 48%. Look, I'm comparing apples and oranges. I completely understand that because we are a developing country. There are a lot more highways which are being newly built as versus what's happening in the US. But I still think 4% to 48% is a huge number. Having said that, I think we should understand that this problem of crumbling infrastructure is not limited to India. It's in fact a larger problem in the developed countries. So I want to show you something which, we have some of the cities leading structural consultants here, and I think this is something which we need to reflect on as structural engineers, that in the United States, they have what they call an infrastructure report card, which is published by the American Society of Civil Engineers for different infrastructures. So one of the report cards, and this is a huge document, it is on bridges. And this document actually has joint ownership of the U.S. Accountability Office, U.S. Office of Transportation, and the ASCE. And what they're saying is that about 10% of their bridges also are structurally deficient. And 4 out of 10 of their bridges are over 40 years old. Okay, so that's 40% of theirs. Because I was reading somewhere in the newspaper, one of the engineers from the government, I think the municipal corporation, the bridge has outlived its life. It's already been 40 years, and so it should be demolished. I just don't understand that, there is nothing written that 40 years is the life of a bridge. By that definition, 40% of the infrastructure would need to be replaced in the US of A. And in spite of the fact that these 10% of bridges are structurally deficient, on an average, about 188 million trips across these deficient bridges are being made each day. Okay, so I think that's very important to understand that where is all of this panic in our city coming from? We are talking about one of the world's most developed countries. And the most recent estimate puts the nation's backlog of bridge rehabilitation at $123 billion. Now, what is important over here is that the report card has given a C+ for the state of bridges in the United States. But to me, what is an item of hope is that if in 2000, I'm sorry about the quality of this slide, but I just wanted to, put everything in one slide. But if you look at it, in 2007, they had 12.5% of their bridges being structurally deficient. At least they have brought it down to 9%. To me, that tells me something I should have hope for. In our country, unfortunately, this graph is not going downwards, it's going upwards. So the problem which we need to kind of tackle is, as we are building new infrastructure, at the rate at which we are building new infrastructure, possibly at a higher rate, we claim that our older infrastructure is getting decrepit and needs to be replaced, which is really what we are saying is we don't know how to maintain our infrastructure. So what really is the state of bridges in India? Okay, we have limited or poorly used maintenance budgets. We are continuously having increased traffic on these bridges, so they are stressed a little bit more than they were earlier. There's a shortage of trained bridge inspectors, and you have an extremely indifferent administration. All of this together creates a very dangerous ignorance of the state of bridges, right? So if you're going to ask me, what is the state of bridges in India? I'm going to tell you, nobody really knows, right? It's sad, but that's reality of where we are today. Now, I'm going to come to the next point I want to discuss about this auditing of bridges, and which is really what all of us have been talking about. You had bridges which were deemed to be safe, and then you had the FOB deck which collapsed. The FOB bridge did not collapse, the FOB deck collapsed, and suddenly bridges which were deemed safe have now been in the re-audit deemed unsafe, right? So this to me is a reflection of the lack of confidence in one's engineering skills and in one's inspection skills, right? So there was one Mr. N.K. Sinha who was the previous Director General for Roads in the ministry. And he once said in an interview that it is possible for one bridge inspector to audit a maximum of 200 meters long stretch of a bridge in a week. Okay, so I have no comment on this. I'm just kind of quoting what he has said, but I'm just kind of comparing it or contrasting it to what happened in Mumbai post July 2018, which was when in Andheri we had a partial collapse of the bridge, and at that time the railways minister said that, we are going to do a joint safety audit. The railways, the BMC and IIT Bombay are going to do it together, and we are going to do 445 ROBs, foot over bridges and everything in less than 6 months. So I'm just trying to contrast that there's somebody who is who was in the ministry saying it's 200 meters in 1 week by one team, and we have our own railways minister saying within 180 days we are going to be able to do 445 ROPs. And it's not like IIT Bombay, okay? It's one professor of IIT Bombay who's part of that team. So let's look at who are now the auditors of BMC. Is there anybody from BMC over here? Okay. Oh yeah, hi. Yes, okay. I had some discussions with on the phone with some DMCs, and I was hoping they're there because you want to quote somebody when they are there. But anyway, so this they had an exercise of empanelment for auditors for bridges in 2013, and then they repeated that exercise in 16-17. So earlier they had about 37 consultants, and now they have about 60 plus consultants. And I was just asking, okay, who are the consultants? And that DMC was scratching the head and gave me 2 or 3 names. And I said, because that person said, I don't think you know anybody else's names. I'm giving you these 3 names. So I said, but these are consultants for doing regular buildings. Oh yeah, but anybody who has a license with us can actually apply and can get empaneled with us. So this is the kind of empanelment we have presently for the auditors of bridges. Okay, and almost no empaneled consultant has any bridge experience, including the faculty member of IIT Bombay. I mean, I'm talking about design of bridges, right? So I'm hardly surprised the fact that, it's off with his head kind of thing as far as bridges are concerned. So my question was, and really there were no answers given to me. I mean, my question was that do these empaneled structural engineers have any technical experience or expertise? And have they even read the bridge inspector's reference manual, which is there with the Indian Roads Congress? I mean, that is something at least you would expect. Was there a training course which was given for bridge maintenance and audit? Were they familiar with the IRC codes at least on bridge maintenance? And does the BMC provide viewing platforms? Now I remember that when this FOB collapse happened at the CST, one of the things that somebody mentioned is that it's again a cover your backside kind of an exercise. But one of the things which was said is that there was no viewing platform for them to actually look at what had happened. And really, in a way, one can say that there were those precast slabs which, if they could be opened, you could look below and see what I mean, the reason I'm not getting into why this failed, but if the precast panels were available and they could have been removed, you could have seen what had happened. But no, what we did is we kind of concreted on top of that, so the joints were not accessible. So who is doing this? When was this decision taken to actually provide this flooring, and was it a well thought of strategy? Were people mindful of the lack of access we would have after that for the joints of the joists with the main girders? And there are no answers to any of this. So my question is that is the work of inspecting, maintaining and repairing bridges, is it being left to unqualified local laborers and supervisors? And I think that prior to what happened over there, if people were honest, the answer would have been a yes. So really what is happening is we have our fate in the hands of very reluctant bridge audit and municipal engineers, and some of them are not used to inspecting bridges, or they have very little time. You can hardly blame them because that's the time schedule we've given them. And some of the municipal engineers, they are really not required to be looking at this. They're not legally bound to. And today you haul up a superintending engineer, you haul up a deputy municipal commissioner, and the point is, if they go to a court of law and they will say we are not subject experts, I don't see any reason why they should be held guilty, because you can't be held guilty for something which is not your area of competency, right? So even as far as keeping maintenance books, as I'm saying, there's no log of what has been done at the FOP CST, and even if there was a log, now it's all vanished, right? So even if they do have these maintenance books, as I'm saying, they possibly, it's just meaningless dummy text that is being put over there. And importantly, the senior engineers are not verifying the data. And I think that's the most important standard operating procedure that should be there, especially the government should have it. It should have SOPs, it should have an institutional memory. And I think, unfortunately, none of that is happening. So I think as of now, I at least think that we have no way of finding out about any of this, and failures are just buried in our country. So we come to this issue about, we definitely need to have a bridge database for the country. Every country has. I mean, the US has a bridge database which the consultants have, the ASCE has, and then there is an association of bridge contractors, I forget the exact name, they have their own database. So, it's very healthy that you have consultants, you have contractors, both of them are maintaining databases, and maybe they're doing it, is just because they want to know what is happening in the infrastructure. It could also be, to find out what are the new jobs, the new projects which are going to come. Whatever is the reason, I think that it's a very healthy thing that there are multiple databases which are being kept over there, so people know which bridges are a problem, which need to be prioritized, and so on. And so I think it's a no-brainer that all of us would agree that we all need to have, that even India needs to have a database which tells you where the location and of the bridge, the age of the bridge, and the condition of it. So it's not something which we are thinking of today. It was thought of way back in 1996. That's when the first exercise started, and it failed. It failed because of the main reason we have such large unemployment, and all of us who run practices know that India has a severe crunch in terms of human resources, employable human resource. So they did. So in 1996, when they decided to start a database management system for bridges, they hired somebody from the UK, O'Sullivan something, I forget the name. And they came in, the software was procured, and but what's important is that this software needs to be operated by engineers, okay? They are engineers who should be able to assess condition of bridges. They should be able to predict how the bridges would deteriorate. They should be able to plan maintenance and repairs and predict the costs necessary. And all they wanted to have is a system which can be run by computer operators. And that wasn't going to happen. So that's when the UK consultant said that bridge management software is going to be purposeless without an effective bridge management organization. So they were putting the cart before the horse. And you need to have very well-defined responsibilities and train the human resources who are not going to be transferred. That's another problem in our country. You just begin to get the skills in a government organization, and when you think you actually cracked it, you're going to be summarily transferred elsewhere. So one of the comments he made before this whole project was wound up was, he said, gravity is an unforgiving taskmaster, and unfortunately the skills of civil engineers in managing its effects are too often taken for granted. And it's very serious. We just don't, sometimes I don't think we have enough failures. So everybody thinks no matter how you abuse a building or a structure or a bridge or whatever, it's going to stand forever and ever and ever. Then we had in 2016, with great fanfare, there was a new Indian bridge management system which was initiated. And see, the thing is, I don't know whether we're all delusional or, but the claims which are made, if any common person who has no access to actually the reality would really be so super impressed with what we do. Because the claim which is being made by the ministry is that they've inventorized 172,000 bridges under the system, out of which 134 are culverts and 32 bridges, this, that, and the other. Okay. So what's the reality of this IBMS as we talk today? It was started, I think, in December 2016. So, about 2.5 years ago. As I said, it started with great pomp and show, as always, and huge funds have been invested. Huge, mind-boggling funds. I'm not here to talk about money. It's not a prime concern. But as what's happening with the audit of the bridges in Bombay, it's been subcontracted to private consultants, and there are no standard operating procedures, no requirement for these consultants to be trained into looking at the bridges and how to kind of document and inventorize it. So one questions, what is the competency of these data collectors? So I was talking to one of the bridge consultancies, in fact, the president of the Indian Association of Bridge and Structural Engineers. And so I was asking him, how do you rate this? So his point was, he said, what we are getting out of it is just a 0 or 1. That is, the bridge is really bad, and it's so apparent that it's on the verge of collapse. And when something is brand new, you can say, oh, it's good. but the various shades of grey are just not being captured. So the database, but at least one thing, maybe what is there in the limited database which has been collected. These numbers of how much they claim they have done, I don't know. But the little that is available and which has been reviewed by some bridge consultants, what they said is that it is showing that 20% of the bridges are in bad state, and but the 80%, we are just not able to get any qualitative information. But the most troubling part is that this data is being collected by these private consultants. We don't know if it's a junior engineer, it's a greenhorn straight out of college who is doing it, whether it's an experienced person. It's just being collected and put up into the database. No government agency is taking ownership of it. So none of the reports are being signed by any government engineer, whether from the railways, from the National Highway Authority, from the Ministry of Roads. So what is this data really worth? We really don't, we can't really trust this data. So, there's just no accountability. Those consultants are going to disappear, and certainly if the consultants are there, the engineer who's done it would have for sure disappeared in 3 years' time from their place. And then, the consultant is going, I know nothing about it, we just did this. So we're spending so much money in investing in very high-tech systems, but we just don't know how to run it. So I think that's really also what we are seeing over here. Now, if we come back to Mumbai, which is where we started, I think all of us have read this, and it's now official that we are the worst traffic jammed city in the world. And as if this was not enough, and this report has been done prior to all of this stuff which we are facing, right? We've seen this. Now, I think what's important, I'm not sure if you can see this, maybe not, but I'll just read out to you what I liked about what Times of India had done was that they gave the bridge, but they also gave the age of the bridge. And most of the bridges, almost all the bridges, are between the age of 29 years to 45 years. There is only one bridge, the FOB at Yellowgate, which was 60 years old, and there was that one at Goregaon, which was 59 years old. But practically every other bridge we are talking about, whether it's an FOB or it's an ROB, almost all of them, there's something which is even 22 years old, they're all between 22 and 45, max 50. What does it say about us as a country? Do we deserve anything? We can't maintain anything that we make, 29 years, and we can't handle it. We will build again, and this is going to happen again. So I think we need to really, and is this kind of a solution that, it's bad, therefore it's dangerous. Why are steel bridges dangerous? How can they become dangerous? In fact, the good thing about steel is it's a material we can work with and we can retrofit it. Concrete, I agree, it's far more complex. That's something which is a totally different ball game. But so many of our bridges are steel. The Lyle Bridge should have been a heritage structure. But of course, for all the heritage conservationists, nothing which is north of Worli is worth saving because there's no heritage. Bombay doesn't exist beyond Worli, beyond north of Worli, right? So Lyle Bridge, nobody even talked about it. It was a steel bridge. Why couldn't we have tried to save it? So these are questions we also need to ask. Those of us who are over here need to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Why are all of these consultants telling us that these steel bridges cannot be saved?
What's the answer? Why?
So yeah, let's think of So I think it's as I'm saying, it's the fear psychosis. When I have seen my colleague, and what the person I talked to in the BMC started out, the preamble was when this happened and this particular engineer was suspended and he lost his job and he lost his pension, etc. From that time on, this is how we review things. And so this is certainly a problem that always in the mind of, and I think so let me just come to that a little bit later. So if we look at it, one second. So if I'm looking at it, just if we, I don't know, let me see if I can try. Yeah, so I'm just going to go through, I'm just showing it to you, show you how important are these linkages. These, this is a north-south city, the east-west linkages are so important. You can't have somebody who is sitting in an ideal environment who can just walk, half a kilometer and go, which is a wonderful way of living, by the way. I wish I could do that, and can walk to work, should not be the one who is telling us that you can just break these and that's fine, that Bombay's life comes to a standstill. And I think that these questions need to be asked. I mean, so here I'm talking about Karnak Bandhan. Now, Baikila Bridge has not been, it's so far not going to be up for demolition, but you reduce the load that it can take. I think that's a problem. That's a problem. We need to have transparency. We need to have full reports available in the public domain. I keep being told, what stops you from just filing an RTI? The issue is that you make it so difficult for us, and there's a difference between us wanting to be activists and some of us who are part of the profession, and there is a problem to always come across as being confrontational when what we would like to do is actually work in tandem with you. So I think that, or if you're looking at what has happened to me, Lyle Road is the worst of all of it, because this is what used to be a 10, and I sit pretty close, so you can understand I'm very passionate about this problem, that what used to take just a 10-minute drive across from the east to the west now takes 1 hour 15 minutes. So it's I don't think that there has been enough of, I can go on. I'm just kind of just showing you what and how and where we are going to. And, if you just we've just mapped it, and I'm just saying which part of the city, or which Mumbaikar is not being affected by it. Then you talk about the FOBs. Okay, so you have all of these various stations where the FOBs have been demolished. So passengers there are being affected. Then entire metro line, all along the metro route, you have so many roads being closed and so many blockages. It adds to further stress, right? So I was hoping that they have a deputy municipal commissioner for disaster management, which is interesting because this morning one of the persons asked me, you said there are 6 technical DMCs. One of the DMCs asked me, who's the 6th DMC who's technical? So I said, would you consider the DMC of disaster management as technical? Oh, I forgot that post existed. So this is the reality of how the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So my point is, before you kind of, just announce, or you have these decrees being announced that this bridge is going to be demolished, this is going to be closed, suddenly you get up next morning and you see a board there, it's closed for traffic. It's like, hello, have you done any kind of a disaster management exercise? What happens if there's a sudden earthquake? What happens if there's this huge big fire? San Francisco had a fire in 1905, which actually destroyed the whole city, right? Anything can happen. What have you done to the various routes of exit? Have you even thought about it? Have you even counted what percentage of the traffic routes of Mumbai are currently blocked or they are severely impaired? Have you even counted how many people are affected by these blockages? And what is the economic loss to the city? I don't think that there is any study of this, and I think that as we have to learn as engineers, that the days when you can just purely be a technical person are long gone. You have to be looking at the techno-economic outcomes of what we are deciding, and we can't have people who are living in islands and who have no actual commitment to the city, or really who are not impacted by the decisions they make, to be making the decisions for us. I think that's something which is very important. I think to come to what we can do, okay? Because it's very easy to say all the negatives. My first thing is don't demolish bridges based on Mickey Mousey reports, because I really think these are all Mickey Mousey reports. I'm not saying that these bridges, some of them may not need to be demolished, maybe they need to be demolished. But this final, this final order of killing something should be taken with a lot of thought. There need to be multiple peer reviews, and you cannot have peer reviews by somebody who is less than the person who has originally done the report, which is what is happening today with all the audits. So I'm saying that, why don't we call, okay, maybe Mumbai doesn't have enough people, maybe don't have enough of bridge audit engineers. Maybe let's call them from other cities. Maybe there are more I know that there are a lot more bridge consultants in Delhi than there are in Mumbai. But there are a lot in Mumbai also who are very good. Maybe we need to go and talk to them and get them involved in it. And very importantly, let's create a cadre of certified bridge audit engineers. I think that's very easy. I talked to the Indian Association of Bridge and Structural Engineers. They are happy to participate. They said we can tie up with this Indian Academy of Highway Engineers and create a certificate course, so that if anybody is interested in becoming a bridge inspector, certified structural engineers, they just can't because they have a BMC license to practice as a structural engineer. That doesn't mean that they can suddenly tomorrow become a bridge audit engineer. Let's kind of get them trained into this. Let's have a certificate course. We can have a whole module. It can be done by this organization. And very importantly, we have to ensure that everybody has skin in the game. Accountability should be for everybody. It should be for all consultants, including the IITs, government engineers, certainly private engineers. As what I was saying, what is ironical is that, all those 7 failures which I listed in my second slide, ironic is that the government, that the IIT guys were the only ones who actually had to suffer. The others, for one day they'll send the junior most engineer in behind the bars, but then, everybody has connects with anybody else's aunt or dog or whatever, so they all go scot-free. But sometimes the government engineers have no place to go, and that is the reason we are seeing these kinds of responses that this bridge, because these bridges have been there for all these years. It's not that suddenly they've become unsafe. If they would have been unsafe even last year. And as I said, that even in the United States of America, you have 9.1% structurally deficient bridges. They are using them. You just want to make sure. See, the problem in the FOB at CST, the girders were great. The main girders were great. God lies in the details. The problem was the joists and the connection of the joist with the girder. That's what is given way. You block it all off. You can't see what's happening to that connect. You're not seeing that the bracket is, have given way. That's a problem. So it's a bridge engineer would understand, would have said, you can't just concrete it like this, and you don't have a means of inspection. But we don't have a system by which we are even logging all the changes we are making to the bridges. So that's a really it's very problematic. The other thing in India which we don't have, and I think some of the countries, whether it's the United Kingdom or the United States, there are structural engineers who only exclusively do forensic engineering. We don't have that. We don't have a culture of really studying failures of bridges. We have our immediate reaction is to sweep it under the carpet. And I think, Shirish Pai is over here, and he's also had experience that, frankly, even in our fraternity, and how you see it in the medical fraternity also, we always want to support our fraternity. So even if I think that there is a particular bridge which was a design failure, as a fraternity, you are supposed to support each other. And I think that, why are we doing that? Because everybody is very fearful of the consequences of the indictment and what will happen. So I think what we need to do is we must find out reasons for failures. We would not have had quite a few of the failures if we had identified the failures in the previous times. We would have kind of internalized the changes, the mistakes we had made, and we would have brought in changes in the codes. And we've not been able to do any of that. So the changes in the Indian codes are happening not because of failures in India. They are happening because of some failures we have studied through some papers we've read elsewhere in the world, which I think is it's quite silly if you ask me. And so the way we need to look at failures is to have a very collaborative approach, and just be very neutral and look at it very academically and see why and what has failed instead of playing hangman, which is what we do most of the time. And as I'm saying, especially municipal engineers, they do not have the skill sets for bridge audits or for most of the work that involves technical work. By the time they've been 5 years, no offense, but the amount of meetings that they have to do, there is very little time for them to actually I would say have any continuing education in technical issues. So I think they can be great administrators, but I think it's very silly to hold them responsible when there is some kind of a failure like this, because what is happening is that they're so afraid. They are seeing some of their colleagues being suspended and so on, so they all are saying, I've got this report, it says to demolish it. I have to demolish it. This guy is an auditor who is empaneled with us, and if he says it has to be demolished, it has to be demolished. I think nobody is taking ownership of the problem. Nobody shows leadership, and they really have very little to do with the way the Mumbaikar is being harried because of the decisions that they are taking. And I think that, in conclusion, I would say that the present state of affairs in Mumbai is due to the fear psychosis which is prevalent in the system, and not because overnight our bridges have become unsafe. Thank you.